I come from the valley, so I'm used to lower elevations. Excuse me. And I've had a long day at work, so I'm going to take this off. You all saw the coat, right? Yeah. So do you all know each other? Are you all like best friends? Sure. So everybody get up. Everybody stand up. Stand up. Turn to the people next to you and say, hello, how are you? Introduce yourself. Good, 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 good. Now turn around and meet the people standing behind you, those poor souls. Say hello to them. Don't sit down. You're going to sit for a long time tonight. I'm a rabbi. So stand up. Now listen, I'm from the valley. We're very affectionate in the valley. So just do me in one indulgence. Put your arms around the people next to you. Draw them close. Isn't that nice? This way, even if you don't like the talk, you'll go home and someone will say, how was it? And you'll say, I stood next to the nicest smelling Jew in Brentwood, right? Isn't that nice, right? Now, we say a bracha whenever we learn Torah. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu mitzvotav etzivanu, la'asok b'divrei Torah. And when Jews get together, it proves to you there might yet be peace in the world. So pray with me. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Thank you and good night. Let's take a seat. Thank you to the Men's Club of Sinai Temple for inviting me. They have an interesting strategy. Some of you are from my shul. The strategy is they have the speaker first and then dinner. That's very clever. Because by us, it's always the other way around. And that's why everyone falls asleep in the middle of my talk. So this is very clever. Thank you for having me. I understand this is part of a series. And that following me, you have Rabbi Artson. And following Rabbi Artson, you have Rabbi Wolpe. That's a lot of juice in one room. Wow. And we're all supposed to talk about the meaning and place of religion in the 21st century, something like that, right? And I'm supposed to talk about the contribution of religion to family and marriage. Well, I'm here and my wife is home, so that tells you a lot about the contribution of marriage. It's an interesting question. And what I'm going to suggest to you is that it's not a question of the contribution of religion to marriage and family. It's a question of something much deeper than that. It's a question of how I define myself as a self. Of who I am and what I expect out of life and what it is I'm pursuing out of life. We had a bar mitzvah kid in my shul. We have a custom, you have the same custom here, I think, that the kid gives a little speech on the occasion of his bar mitzvah. And this was a prodigious little young man, tiny little fellow in a shiny little suit with his shiny shoes. And he got up in his cracking 13-year-old voice, he talked about his Torah portion, and in the middle of the speech he said, you know, today is my bar mitzvah. Today I'm a man. Which means to me, he says, that someday when I'm really a man, I'm going to have a Ferrari. And I'm going to date a supermodel. And I'm going to fly on my private jet to my condo in Maui. And then I'll know that I'm really a man. And I'm sitting on the bima listening to this young fellow, wondering, what do you say to such a kid? The first thing I'm wondering is, like, who taught him this? Where did he learn this? Where did he learn that the definition of adulthood is a Ferrari, a supermodel girlfriend, a Maui condo, and a private jet? Who taught him that that's the epitome, that that's the quintessence of one's selfhood, that one should spend a lifetime reaching toward? And I have about 30 seconds from the time he finishes his speech to the time I have to give him a blessing. So I walk over and I put my arm around him, and I said, and he thought he was going to get like punished. And I thought about that. I thought about revoking his bris. I can do that, you know. I can do that. And I said to him, you know, today you're not a man, but today you're beginning to become a man. So I'm glad you said what you said, because it gives us occasion to talk about important things. I hope you get everything you pray for. I hope you get the Ferrari. And I hope you get the supermodel girlfriend. And I hope you get the private jet. And I hope you get the condo in Maui. I hope you get everything that you pray for. But I need you to hear something. And you probably won't understand what I'm about to say now, but someday you will come back to me and tell me that I was right. And here's what I want you to hear. The success that you're reaching for, I hope you reach it. I really do. I don't begrudge you any of those gifts. But I want you to hear one thing. That success is too small. That success is too ordinary. That success is too easy to achieve. And one day you're going to discover that even when you have all of that, you haven't got very much at all. You see, all of that's going to go on one side of your resume. One day you're going to show up in an office and apply for a job, and you're going to put down on the human resources manager's table, you're going to put a resume, and that resume is going to have all of your descriptions of all of your life. It's going to have your college degrees and your accolades and your credentials and your awards and your experiences, and all of that's fine, and I hope it's a long and a bright and a powerful resume. But understand, that's not you. That's only a part of you. And I don't begrudge you any of that. We're not one of those religions. There are religions that condemn the acquisition of material wealth. We're not one of them. Rabbi Wolpe, Rabbi Artson, and I bless all of you with immense wealth. Just understand something important. That's not all of what you are. Your net worth is not a measure of your personal worth. It's not the totality of what you are. So I said, kid, turn it over. Turn that resume over. And let's talk about what's on the back. Because on the back is a different measure of self. A completely different measure of self. There's a beautiful midrash in the tradition. It's based on a line in the book of Psalms, which we read in the Hallel service on Rosh Chodesh and on holidays. The line is, Pitchu li sharei tzedek avovam odeya. Open for me the gates of righteousness, and I will enter there. Zeh ashar l'Adonai. This is the gate to God. Tzadikim yavohu. Only the righteous can enter here. And the rabbis of the Talmud asked the question, when would anyone ever say such a thing? When would anyone ever say, Pitchu li sharei tzedek, open for me the gates of heaven? And they create a story of folklore. And it's a context for that verse of the Psalms. And the folklore says that when a person dies in this world, the body is buried and the soul ascends to heaven. And the soul stands in front of the gates of heaven. And there's an angel who guards those gates, sort of a Jewish Saint Peter. And the angel looks at the soul and says, what was your occupation in the world? What did you do in the world? And if the soul says, I was a lawyer, the angel says, you go to hell. No, the angel doesn't say that. If the soul says, I was a lawyer, I was a doctor, I was a professor, I was a rabbi, I was a business executive, the soul says, irrelevant. That's irrelevant. What did you do in the world? And if the soul says, I amassed wealth, they say it's irrelevant. What did you do in the world? And the Midrash says that if the soul says, in the world, I fed the hungry. I fed the hungry. Then the angel says, Zeh hashar l'Adonai tzadikim yavohu. You who fed the hungry. You who open your hand to the hungry, the gates of heaven are open to you, enter. And if the soul says, I took care of the vulnerable, Then they say to him, you who open your hand to the vulnerable, the gates of heaven are open to you. And the same thing for those who raised abandoned children, and those who gave charity in the world, and those who did acts of loving kindness. It's a beautiful midrash about how you get into heaven. But I have a secret to tell you. It's a very small secret, but it's an important secret. The guys who wrote that midrash, the rabbis who wrote that midrash, they haven't the foggiest idea what happens after you die. They don't know any more than you or I know. That's not what it's really about. That's not what the midrash is really about. What the midrash is really about is a transposition of values that happens when we leave the normal course of our routines and we enter the kind of special way of living that comes with intense moments. The most intense moment a person can experience is the death of a loved one. And when you go to the cemetery and you stand before the open grave, you think about life with very different terms than you think about life normally. And that's what the midrash is about. I've been a rabbi 35 years. I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of services at the cemetery. I have never heard a kid get up and say, I love my dad because of how much money he made. I have never heard a kid get up and say, I love my mom because she had power in the corporate world. What do kids say at the occasion of the death of a loved one? They say, I love my dad because there was a guy at the shop whose wife was sick. And he came to my dad and asked for some help, and my dad took out his wallet, gave the guy a few bucks, and made sure that the wife had medical care. Because there was a family in the community that was bereaved or broken or abandoned, and mom opened her heart to that family. No one ever talks about what someone has. They only talk about what someone gives. No one ever talks about how powerful they were, only how caring and how giving there are. Milo's here and he can check my math. There's about 25,000 grave markers at Mount Sinai Memorial Park, right?
80,000.
80,000? All right, 80,000, that's what I said, 80,000 grave markers at Mount Sinai Memorial Park. And not one of them says BA Harvard. Not one of them says your SAT score, your net worth, your tax bracket. Not one of them has your GRE on it or your grade average. What do they all say? Caring mother, loving father, giving friend, creative soul. They all talk about relationships. They all talk about connection. They all talk about giving. That's the kind of value that we come to learn at the graveside. So there's two sides to your resume, you see? There's the side of your resume, which is the way we normally measure a human being's value. By their money and their power and their position and their prestige. And then there's the other side, which only seems to come to light in moments of tragedy like that. And suddenly we understand that there's a whole different set of values by which a human life is measured. There's a whole different kind of success. Giving. So I say to the kid, the first thing I want on your resume is giving. I want to know what causes matter to you. I want to know what mission you have in life. I want to know what in the world you think you are called to repair and renew and resurrect in the world. What are you giving yourself to? The other side of your resume is all the stuff you're able to take. That I know. I want to know what you give to. And I don't even want to know how much you give. That's irrelevant to me. I just want to know whether it consumes your heart. Is there some cause in the world that makes you cry? Is there some cause in the world that makes you stay up at night worried? Is there something in the world outside of yourself? Outside of this little circle that you've drawn around yourself? The part that says, me, 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 I want, I want, I want. Is there something in the world that you say, I want to help, and I want to heal, and I want to give? Because that's the way you live a life that matters. Because that's the only way that you live a life that matters. That's the first thing I want to read on the second side of your resume. And here's the second thing I want to read on the second side of your resume. Who do you belong to? Let me ask you. Is there someone in the world who could call you at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, I need you, and without a question you will say, I will be right there? Then you're a very wealthy person. And is there someone in the world you could call at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, I need you, and that person will say, I'm right there? Then you are a very, very well-off person. To have someone who cares for you to that extent, without question, without condition, without qualification, who will come to be with you. Who will come to be with you. That's a profound gift. That sense that myself is not just self-contained, self-possessed, self-isolated, but that myself is open to another, to share life, to give of myself, to be a friend, to be a partner, to be a lover, to be a soulmate, to be with somebody. If there's someone in the world who feels that way about you and someone you feel that way about them, then you're a very, very, very well-off person. I know a lot of rich people. Thank God I know a lot of rich people. I know a lot of lonely rich people. I know a lot of rich people who would give it all to have someone who cared for them. But they discover too late in life that you can't buy this sort of thing. It has to be an attitude you carry into life. It's an openness to another. It's a sense of listening, a humility in the face of another person's needs, a sense of sharing of the self. We in America have a hard time with this because we're taught from the very early age a sort of ethic, a culture of individualism. And the culture of individualism defines the self as sovereign. The self as self-contained. The self as the totality of everything. And we have this sort of sense of suspicion about anyone who enters into the circle of myself, because that entering into the circle of the self impinges on me, places a claim on me, reduces my options. There's a reason why so many Jewish boys reach their 30th birthday and they're not married yet. Because they spend all of their youth like consuming. As long as I'm in the guise of a consumer, I control the transaction. I never really let another person in. So he goes on a date and he spends some time with her and he gets to know her, but by the end of the evening he's sort of figured out why she's not the one. And then he goes on another date. Now it's a good thing there's 650,000 Jews in Los Angeles. So, you know, if you're looking for a Jewish partner, that leaves, if you're heterosexual, 325,000 possibilities. But after a while you run out and they come to see the rabbi. And he sits in my office crying and he says to me, I don't understand why I can't find a partner. So I say to him, well, tell me about it. What are you looking for? He says, Rabbi, I don't want very much. I just want a traditional girl. I want sweet, I want kind, I want, you know, giving, loving, gentle, tall, thin, blonde, and she can cook. She'll do what I tell her to do. And you realize what he wants. You know what he wants? He wants his mama, only, 30 years younger. That's what he wants, right? I mean, he's a consumer and she's a commodity. Because as long as he reduces her to a commodity, then he can control the transaction and cut it off whenever it feels like he's being impinged upon. Whenever he feels like he's being engaged in some way. You know the story about the salmon and the chicken who go for a walk. You know that story, right? The salmon and the chicken, they go for a walk, and they see the big sign that says, lox and eggs breakfast for charity. And the chicken says, let's go in, it looks like fun. And the salmon says, gee, I don't know. And the chicken says, come on, it's for a good cause, we'll go in, we'll have a good morning. And the salmon says, listen, I really don't know. And the chicken says, come on, what's holding you back? And the salmon says, look what it says. Lox and eggs. From you, they want a contribution. From me, they want commitment. That's an attitude in this culture, a definition of self that is contained and understands any kind of engaging relationship as a claim on the self that somehow diminishes selfhood. By the way, as an aside, which is not the topic for tonight, so you'll have to invite me back another time to do this talk. That's why getting young people to join a synagogue is so damn hard. because they understand synagogue membership in the same way. So they come to Sinai Temple as consumers. You're selling a commodity. Nursery school education, Hebrew school or day school education, a bar mitzvah for the kid. They pay their money, they collect their commodity, and the day the kid has the bar mitzvah, they're out the door. They'll never truly be members. They'll never truly contribute, because the idea of being a member and contributing and taking ownership of the community and feeling a real sense of belonging impinges upon the freedom of the self. That's what America teaches kids. That's what America teaches kids. By the way, if you think I'm crazy about this, there's a thing online which you have to go see. If you're my age, this is a revelation. If you're younger than me, you're going to go, ugh, right? But if you're my age, it's called J-Date. Do you know what J-Date is? J-Date, it's the computer site where they find each other, right? Now there's 100 others. There's J-Swipe and Match.com and eHarmony. But go on one of these. Just make sure your spouse is sitting next to you so they don't get suspicious, right? And just go and see. Because what happens is the person on J-Date puts up a profile. It's like selling a used car. I'm not kidding. It's the same language. I want a low mileage, low maintenance, late model with nice headlights and a good looking trunk. Think you can arrange that for me? Because the consumer relationship is the only relationship they know. Because in the consumer relationship, I can walk out at any time. Because real love, because real friendship, because real engagement requires the vulnerability of letting down my defenses and letting that person actually come close to me. Now I'll say something controversial, but we're all grown-ups. They'll touch each other sexually, but they won't touch each other soul to soul. That is the problem of this culture. So I say to my little friend, you want a supermodel? That's great. That's just great. Do you think you'll ever really know her soul? And he laughs at me and says, soul, Rabbi? Look at her body. And I say, I'm looking at her body, but I think inside of there somewhere, maybe, there's a soul. And you really won't know that woman until you have a soul relationship with somebody. And you will never be fulfilled in your life until you define yourself as a person who truly needs to know the soul of the other. That's what makes for a happy life. That's what makes for a happy life. So I want to know what you give. I want to know who you love. These are the two things on the back of your resume. And there are many more things that we could put back there. I want to know what you want to create in the world. Every one of us has been put into the world to create something. And I think you've been put into the world to create something too. You know that there are 5,245 verses in a Sefer Torah. You knew that, right? And you know that a Sefer Torah is handwritten on parchment with a goose quill. You knew that too, right? And you also know the rule that if any letter of the Torah is missing, even the smallest yud, the whole Torah is puzzled. You can't use that Torah. The whole Torah has to be set aside and repaired, even if the smallest letter has been rubbed off, erased, or neglected. Now that's a good example of Jewish obsessive-compulsive disease. But really it has a meaning, because each letter of the Torah is one of us. And each one of us have been sent into the world to deliver a message to the world. One letter of God's message. And each one of us, that's our purpose in the world, to say something to the world. What have you to say to the world? What is your message into the world? And how are you going to say it? That's the purpose of your existence here. But have you spent any time really thinking about that in the time you're on your private jet on the way to your Maui condo? That really is what you're here for. What religion can contribute to contemporary life is a different sense of self. The other side of the resume. A set of values which are completely different than the ones that we're taught in conventional life. And that, I think, is what we ought to be teaching young people. That there is that we celebrate their success. I want you to go to a good school, and I want you to get good grades, and I want you to get high scores, and I want you to go off to fine colleges, and I want you to earn and earn and earn. But understand, that's just the beginning. That's not the end of life. That's not the purpose of life. That beyond that, there's a second set of values that define what a successful life looks like. Not how much you got, but how much you give. Not who you take, but who you love. And not all the noise you make, but whether you have something substantial to say to the world and a way of saying it, a creative way of saying it. Whether you contribute to the beauty of the world. And that's a successful life. That's a very successful life. There's a beautiful homily about this in the book of Psalms. And you'll know this, if any of you who come to shul on Friday night. You know, it's hard to get to shul on Friday night because of the freeways, but if you come to shul Friday night, in the Kabbalat Shabbat service, the last psalm is called Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat. It's the 92nd psalm, and the last 4 verses are quite remarkable. It says, Tzaddik hatamar yifrach ke'erez balvanon yiskeh. The tzaddik will bloom like a palm tree and grow mighty like a cedar in Lebanon. Now, what is a tzaddik? Well, they're going to define a tzaddik for you. A tzaddik is a person who understands that second side of the resume. Who understands that the success of my life is in who I love and what I give and how I share myself with the world. And what happens to that person? The last 2 lines of the psalm are quite beautiful. It says, O yunuvum b'seva deshenin v'ranin yihiyu. Even in old age, they're still full of fruit and vigor and strength and power. Lahagid ki ashar Adonai tzuri v'lo avlat tavo. And they reach the last day of their life. You reach the last day of your life, and your great-great-grandchildren come to your side and they say, Nu Zayda, Nu Papa, was it worth it? Was it worth it? And a person who lives a life that is truly given to others, truly open-handed, truly loving, can say to his great-great or her great-great-great-grandchildren in that last moment, it was wonderful. Now, what kind of life do you have to live today on a Tuesday to make sure that that day is going to come one day? And that's the great question. And that's the role of religion. That's the role of religion in the 21st century. To offer a completely countercultural idea of self that might actually give us lives that are worth living. So I have good news and bad news for you. Which would you want first? You're Jews. I'll give you the bad news first, because Jews love bad news. Just thrive on bad news. Here's the bad news. You ready? Living a Jewish life will not make you thin. Trust me on this one. Living a Jewish life will not make you good looking. Living a Jewish life will not make you rich. Living a Jewish life will not make you brilliant. Living a Jewish life will not make you materially successful. I'm not even sure I could say that living a Jewish life will make you happy. That's something I'm working on. It's not designed to do any of that stuff. It's designed to do one thing. And this one thing it does exquisitely well. Living a Jewish life will give you a life that you can be proud of. A life of significance, a life of purpose, a life of meaning, and a life of love. Properly executed, it does that exceedingly well. That, to me, is what religion adds to life in the 21st century. Thank you very much.